What's the weirdest rule you had in your home growing up? I wasn't allowed to put sugar in my tea because my mum told me that when you go to prison they don't let you have sugar. So it will makes prison that much harder. 1. Thanks for having so much faith in me, mum. 2. I'm pretty sure you are allowed sugar for your tea in prison. At my friend's house they had a no pizza balling rule. There were 3 teenage brothers and when they ordered pizzas, at least a couple larges, tempers flared quickly when people would try to grab as many slices as they could. The first rule in place was that you couldn't have more than 1 slice at a time. And you could grab another once you had the last bite in your mouth. But one of the brothers quickly figured it out that if you ball up a slice he could fit it in his mouth and grab another one. Hence, no pizza balling. Edit 1. Spelling and stuff. Edit 2. To be clear, I'm not endorsing this as a good idea. It's just a thing I saw happen. When the pizza box was about to hit the table, the only thing the mom said was remember, no pizza balling. Which was so confusing for me. For about 5 seconds. My dad made up a rule to stop my big brother from asking about getting a dog every 10 seconds. We had neighbors on both sides who had dogs. So the rule was that only every other house could have a dog. My brother believed it for a long time. If the dare officer at school shows you something and it smells familiar, say nothing. I will explain it later. Also, if mom's room smells like incense, it is the best time to ask for something. We had silverware with roses on it. Our thumbs had to be on the rose when we used the utensils or we'd have to practice after dinner. Utensils couldn't make any noise against your teeth or you'd have to practice after dinner. My house was a real ball of laughs growing up. We could watch Freddy movies but not Jason movies. BC My mom thought Friday the 13th was satanic but Nightmare on Elm Street movies were just for fun. I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons growing up because Bart was disrespectful to his parents. However, Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street were totally fine. I wasn't allowed to put any personal touches in my room. No posters, paint colors, pictures of my friends, or any sort of choices, not even my comforter. It was all decorated to my mother's specifications. Me too. Anything I wanted to put up had to be specifically approved by my mom. She also has a very specific color scheme consisting of mostly white and ocean blue. I didn't realize how weird it was until some kids came over in high school and were walking around my house commenting that it looked like no one lived there. I still can't wear or buy anything that shade of blue. I looked at it plenty growing up. My parents acted like referring to them as he or she while they were in the room was the equivalent of saying duck you. So referring to my parents with pronouns was effectively not allowed. That seems like it could create some very cumbersome sentences. Your mom was planning on going out with mom's friends tomorrow evening. So we have to make dinner while mom is gone. It's time mom got some free time to mom's elf. Wasn't allowed to say sucks or freaking. I could only buy things if I was buying them for a birthday or Christmas gift for somebody else. Mind you, this was my own money I earned from my job. My mom knew how long it took to get home from school. So if I stopped at the store, she knew and I'd be in trouble. My parents weren't this bad. But I wasn't really allowed to buy expensive things for myself. Work all summer and save up money to buy a high-end computer? Nope. That item is too expensive and you'll waste away your youth playing games. So naturally I whittled my money away on small meaningless purchases instead of buying the one big thing I actually wanted. We weren't allowed to say we were bored. We had a board jar. 50 pence a slip up. This wasn't an official rule in my house. But if I told my mom I was bored, she would give me a chore. So I stopped saying it. I was never allowed to leave a drink in the car because, according to my mother, someone could poison it. She's always been overly paranoid about safety. But that one is my favorite. My dad has a thing about drink safety too. His thing was that if you opened a soda can and then lost eye contact with it, even briefly, you shouldn't drink from it again because a bee could have gotten in it. I mean, Technically a possibility, but probably not a common enough issue to have been discussed as much as it was. Edit. Okay guys, dad was right, as usual, but I'm never telling him these stories. He doesn't need that much confirmation of his genius. Maybe the oil field story. Both because my dad used to work in the oil field himself and because that story is pretty metal. No pooping or peeing within the hours of 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock AM. Or PM. AM. Not sure if they had a reason. But it was always so random that I couldn't decide on how to get my hair cut until I turned 14. I couldn't decide for my haircuts until I was 18. I'm a girl and my parents made me keep my hair waist length. It's shoulder length now. Think of all the character you built. Wasn't me but my neighbor. When my dad would come home from work, my friend would have to go home. His parents told him that because that meant it was dinner time and therefore he should come home. Him being a child didn't grasp that portion of the rule. He only understood come home when my dad gets home. This translated in my friend being terrified of my father. If he saw my dad turning into the driveway, he would drop whatever we were doing and sprint home. If my dad would make it home and get out of the car, he would cry and run home. Somehow in his head, my father was bad. It took some time before my friend was comfortable around my father. Cursing Thursdays. You could say whatever you wanted with no consequences. Had someone stay over who knew the rule. Opened my parents' bedroom and said goodnight Methodicas. If you didn't swear at your parents on the other days of the week. This proves the purge works. No touching the pets. We had a sweet little Bichon Larsimix that would beg for cuddles in the best tuxedo cat ever. Duck you mom and dad. You psychotic ducks. I cuddle the shit out those critters every time you weren't around. Wait, were they allowed to touch the pets? My mother was allowed to hold and play with a cat. My dad, who was insane, was allowed to play with both critters. I rebelled and got a bunch of parakeets my senior year of high school. But that's another story. And there was Sebastian, the hermit crab. But he was a pinchy little ducker. We weren't allowed to say I am the best or I am the greatest. My dad grew up in a competitive household. I went to private Christian school and some kids told me they got in trouble at home if they said something was awesome. Only God is awesome, they'd be told. I wasn't allowed to wear my hat backwards. My dad thought that it was a gang thing. Mind you, this was in rural Wisconsin in the 90s. My parents are wonderful people. Just may not have had the best understanding of the world at that time. That if someone knocked on the door, we were not allowed to move or speak until mom decided that yes, we were home and would accept company. Didn't realize how weird that was until my friend came over and seemed surprised when someone knocked on the door. And I covered her mouth and pulled her away from the curtains. My mom refuses to answer the door for unannounced visitors and to this day will still pretend no one is home if she doesn't feel like socializing. It's even worse when they call her cell phone and hear it ringing from within the home despite every television being on mute and every light in the house being turned off. Edit. To answer some questions. My mother has severe bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, so that had a lot to do with this. Also, I never knew so many people did this. Maybe my friend was the weird one, haha. After school treat was the only time we could have cookies. Only 3. Not too weird. But it had a significant impact. I'm 50 now and will still have exactly 3 cookies when I have cookies. I couldn't recline or lay my body down at all if my boyfriend was over. My mom thought that me laying down would give them thoughts, so I couldn't do it. Once I put my feet up on the couch while my fiance was over and my mom got pissed and thought I was trying to turn him on. I also changed into sweat pants from jeans once because I was going to watch a movie with my boyfriend and she thought I changed to give him better access. I was just uncomfortable in jeans. Also, no Sailor Moon, Avatar, Fairly Odd Parents, Harry Potter, anything with magic or witchcraft. Also never celebrated Halloween and never trick or treated. I should never ask what's for lunch dinner. My mom and dad would answer food angrily. So we stopped asking after a while. That's actually quite funny. Whenever my parents asked me what I wanted for dinner, I would always say food. They stopped asking me what I wanted to eat when I said it in front of some guests, which made it seem like they didn't feed me. If you come home at night and the door's locked, even if I have a key, find somewhere else to sleep. Can't remember which serial killer this pertains to, but one got a victim this way. A girl came home past curfew and her parents said she had to sleep outside. Then the killer took her from her porch. My memory of this is very vague, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about the details. Fight to the cry. I lived in a house with my grandparents and my grandfather didn't like to hear whiny kids. So if any of us were being a constant annoyance, he hit me. No, I didn't. Yes, you did, he would just tell us. Fight to the cry. Duke it out. First one to cry lost the argument. You don't use save on the computer, you always use save as, because if you don't you could delete everyone's information on the computer. At least your parents knew the difference between save and save as. I can't remember what I did wrong, but my dad came up with around 20 pages of rules I had to follow as a punishment. The weirdest was that I could no longer eat ice cream sandwiches. No singing at the dinner table. This rule was frequently broken. Why singing at dinner table? Our parents thought it detracted from meaningful conversation and family bonding time. But I think it ended up actually enhancing my relationships with my siblings. My father woke up at anywhere between 10 and 12 every day. Immediately upon waking, he would stumble to the bathroom, where he would spend 45 to 75 minutes coughing mucus out of his lungs and spitting it into the sink. He had advanced emphysema because of his decades-long smoking habit. During this time, no one was to talk to him, look at him, or interact with him in any way beyond bringing him shitty instant coffee. I learned this lesson the hard way the first week after my mother married him, because I had to pee. So I opened the door and was immediately confronted with a 38-year-old 400-pound man in nothing but his underwear, red-faced and screaming at me to get the duck out of the bathroom. Edit, speech to text. We couldn't eat supper until dad got home from work. Even if it was 9 PM. We had to eat everything we could or hide the food before my father came home, because he would devour everything. Probably because he skipped lunch. As a workaholic, he did no physical work and little sports, but countered that with heavy smoking. My grandmother said not to sheet during a lightning storm because a bolt of lightning might strike the pipe and electrocute me. We were only allowed one towel a week. We could do whatever we wanted with it, but we didn't get another until next week. This was a test. You were supposed to weaponize your towel and take your siblings' towels, becoming the towel god. How do you live with being such a disappointment? Wasn't allowed to watch anything with a black person in a prominent role. My dad was super racist, so I missed out on everything from That's So Raven to Fresh Prince. Even Dora got a hard pass. My dad was the same, till his own dad informed him that he was not, in fact, anywhere close to being white. Jeez and gosh were banned because they sounded kinda like Jesus and God, so it was considered subtly taking the Lord's name in vain. Wasn't allowed to say shut up because it was a bad word as well, and then one day my mom told me to shut up. We weren't allowed to celebrate Halloween because it was the devil's holiday. We weren't even allowed to go to school that day in order to avoid the festivities. They told us the Halloween candy was cursed so we wouldn't eat it. In the night we turned off the lights and hid in terror. It was unsafe to go outside in case a Satanist kidnapped us to sacrifice to the devil. Also, Pokemon was considered demonic. Felt bad for watching it, but couldn't resist. My dad allowed me to have a bed, 5 outfits, hygiene products, and a Bible. That's it. His wife would make my sister and I sit on towels on the couch because we smelled like shit. My stepmom would send strongly worded emails to my mom regarding my overconsumption of yogurt at their house. I wasn't allowed to go near the kitchen, In my country it's common for middle class families to have maids doing house chores. And my parents said I shouldn't bother the maids doing the job. Also, kitchen is full of dangerous things. So, I grew up not knowing how to cook anything. Every time I go near the kitchen my mother would kind of mean laugh at me, saying I can't cook so I shouldn't bother messing the kitchen. She can't cook herself, having maids her whole life. So that might be insecurity projection or something, I don't know. Or maybe she thought if she can't cook and her daughter can, it'll expose her as a bad mother or something. The woman has a lot of that kind of insecurity. There's a lot to unpack there. Once I moved out, one of the first things I do was start teaching myself how to cook. I love cooking now. Sorry for bad English. Edit. Thank you for the compliment on my English. I'm a writer and still practicing. And for the silver. Man oh man. Just reading through some of these responses makes me even more appreciative that my parents weren't ducking crazy. Bedtime was 7 PM until I was in my teens. I didn't realize other kids had much later bedtime until I was a teenager. I think it was mostly because my mum's favorite soapy comes on at 7 PM. We were noisy kids. When I turned 16, I was not allowed to leave my room for any reason whatsoever between the hours of 11 PM, 8 AM. I had my own bathroom and was given a mini fridge for snacks if I got hungry or was up late in the summer. I found out later that this was because my mom would get on dating sites and invite random men to the house for coitus and didn't want me stealing the spotlight and taking away her shot at love. Edit to answer some questions. I don't think she was doing this for money, because we were always broke as shit. If she did get compensation, it was probably very small amounts, or non-monetary. I didn't mind too much because we fought a lot and I tended to keep my distance from her anyways. It was just weird that she'd specifically lock me in during that time. She was in therapy. She was on meds. The problem was that they would stop working or she'd start abusing them after so long and then it'd start another spiral or crazy shit. This was one of the most tame behaviors of hers. She never really got better. Just worse. This all came to a head a few years ago when she basically ran away from home. We got a call about 2 months later that they had found her laying prone on the ground with no response, with some injuries that were consistent to a small gang in the city she was living in at the time. Best we can tell, she got into some trouble with the man they held her or had her held. I didn't have a great relationship with my mom, but yes, I still loved her. My dad had diverticulosis, pockets in the intestine, and couldn't eat sesame seeds, among other things. When we would eat fast food sandwiches, everyone had to give their bottom buns to dad in exchange for his top buns. So all my life I grew up eating burgers with top seeded buns. This was never explained, and it was from before I born. So it was literally when I was in college that I realized that it wasn't normal. I thought it was just dad privilege TM to have 2 bottom buns. My parents are awesome, but I have some weird cousins. When I was younger my parents went on a short anniversary trip, leaving me and siblings with my older cousin to watch us. She is the same age as my parents. I remember one morning turning on Magic School Bus, and she frantically grabs the remote from me and turns it off. She then proceeds to go on a lecture on how witchcraft is a sin and made by Satan himself, and that Magic School Bus is one of those sinful abominations. I couldn't ducking believe it. Turns out her kid wasn't allowed to watch anything like that. Harry Potter, Magic School Bus, Wizards of Waverly Place, some of the many things that apparently are just a gateway to joining a satanic cult. Her sister held the same beliefs. For a while my mom had us go to public school in the city she worked in and used my stepdad's business address. She was so scared about being caught that we weren't allowed to have friends. This lasted for 6 years. My mom's shitty boyfriend moved us into his mobile home and suddenly I wasn't allowed to have a bed. It might break through the floor, or a swing set or any of my toys. I was not allowed to watch TV if the boyfriend was home. I wound up begging my mom to buy me some horse magazine and coloring books and made my own paper doll style toys. Ponies and Lion King for dollies. The boyfriend also offered to buy me a horse if I behaved. So of course I was a model child, but mysteriously, that horse never appeared. I was so much better off when they broke up and mom found a 2-bedroom apartment. I got a real bed and a kitten. Mom told me recently that he died and was shocked when I gave 0 ducks and made a callous statement about it. Parents divorced. Dad's house, we were told to shower when we visited and put our mom's house clothing in a box under the bed after it was cleaned because mom's house was infected. It's called the mom's house box. Later found out my stepmom was paranoid because my dad cheated on my mom and she thought my mom would take revenge somehow. It got crazier than that. My stepmom made us write in journals. Told us to write whatever we wanted. So we did. After 3 years she read it out loud at the dinner table and then punished us for what we wrote. Later she locked me in my room. Called the cops, said I was trying to murder her. Got told to be appreciative of my rich family by a cop. Once I went to school, I told them what happened and stepmom got told she wasn't allowed to be on the school property anymore. Dad and her had to move to a different area.